Andy Ruiz has fired his trainer Manny Robles following his loss to Anthony Joshua in the rematch. Now, Robles says he saw it coming, he expected it. Interestingly, he says he was told by Ruiz's father that it was Al Haymon's decision to have him fired. Robles said that he didn't want, he said that he was told by Ruiz's dad that Haymon didn't want Ruiz making the same mistakes again, and therefore Robles had to go. Now, Ruiz didn't blame Robles in the wake of the fight, and Robles says he's happy about that, even though he did expect to be fired. But who should we blame for Andy Ruiz's shortcomings? I think ultimately we have to blame Ruiz himself. Because let's just talk about the elephant in the living room here, people, no pun intended. But Andy Ruiz has got a serious eating disorder. He's probably had it all his life, okay? And the money that he received from the first AJ fight made the eating disorder even worse. And the money he received for the rematch could make it even worse again. At this point, is Andy Ruiz a write-off? I remember years ago when Mike Perez won Prize Fighter. And at the time, Prize Fighter was the centerpiece of Matchroom Promotions in terms of the shows they were putting on. Mike Perez won the Prize Fighter tournament, and I remember a lot of British boxing fans at the time were very impressed with Mike Perez. And I made a video after he won that tournament, and I said, I bet you Mike Perez goes away and gets fat. Because at the time he was in shape. And I said, I bet he goes away and gets fat. Because that's what Cuban heavyweights tend to do when they see a bit of money. Mike Perez, I think, won 35 grand that night. And he was based in Ireland, obviously. He already had a family at the time, if memory serves me correct. And I just thought, that's the first decent paycheck, decent for him at the time, that he's received. He's going to blow that and he's going to get fat. And lo and behold, when Mike Perez came back, he was way heavier. And his weight continued to go up and up and up and up and up. Eventually, he got knocked out in the first round by Alexander Povetkin. Now, he says that he actually drank half a bottle of rum before he got in the ring against Povetkin. Now, part of that, he kind of suggests, was to do with the trauma he was dealing with because of the Abdul Salamov fight, the tragic outcome to that fight. And that, as far as he's concerned, is why he was drinking. But in terms of his weight gain, no. His weight gain was happening even before the Abdul Salamov fight and after the fight. And it's typical of Cuban heavyweights over the years because they grow up in Cuba and they've barely got, I was going to use an expletive there. I'm trying to tone it down here for YouTube. But they've barely got a pot to pee in. Okay? They're on a very meager diet, Spartan lifestyle in Cuba. They're poor. When they come to the West and they taste a little bit of money for the first time and they have the opportunity to eat whatever they want for the first time in their lives, a lot of the Cuban heavyweights go crazy. We saw that with Odlanier Solis. We saw that with, back in the days, Jorge Luis Gonzalez, who was a very good amateur, by the way. Beat Teofilo Stevenson, beat Lennox Lewis, beat Riddick Bowe in the amateurs. But Gonzalez as a pro was a total letdown. But anyway, Cuban heavyweights, they tend to go that way. Lack of discipline. The turning point for Mike Perez was when he got knocked out by Povetkin. He got serious and he actually dropped down to cruiserweight. Should have been a cruiserweight all along, truth be told. But got serious, dropped down to cruiserweight and was in great shape. But the thing with Mike Perez is that most of his life he's been an athlete. When he was in Cuba, he was ripped to shreds as an amateur. So his body still had the memory of how to get in shape and what being in shape feels like. Whereas with Andy Ruiz, this guy's been, let's be real, obese. It would seem all his life or most of his life. So his body doesn't know what it feels like to be trim. So even though Andy Ruiz came in very heavy for the rematch with AJ, he was very heavy for the first fight. Like, let's talk about the elephant in the living room here. This guy's got an eating disorder. And it's a shame because Andy Ruiz is a very talented fighter. If he was able to get down, let's say under 240 and stayed at that weight for a year so his body gets used to that weight, so he can become energetic and strong at that weight, he could be a beast with extra foot speed, with more mobility in his waist so he can have better upper body movement. If he was lighter, he might be able to have that. But as is right now, it seems as though that payday against AJ might be the worst thing that ever happened to Andy Ruiz in terms of his health. It potentially could be. I mean, Buster Douglas, when he got that payday against Mike Tyson, well, actually, really the payday against Holyfield, he didn't get paid much for the Tyson fight. But when he got the payday against Holyfield, he ate himself into a diabetically induced coma. For those of you who don't know Buster Douglas's story, he nearly killed himself. He nearly ate himself to death after the Holyfield fight. Now, part of it obviously was the depression of losing to Holyfield, but obviously he had issues with eating even prior to that. So we've seen this kind of thing happen before. Hopefully it doesn't happen to Andy Ruiz, but people really should take note of trainers who have worked with particular fighters before and what they say about them. In this instance, Abel Sanchez, because Sanchez, immediately after Andy Ruiz beat Anthony Joshua, Sanchez was straight away saying AJ will win the rematch. He was one of the few people out there saying that AJ is going to win the rematch, and he was actually saying that the fight would go the distance. Look at this. This is from 15th of June 2019, 15th of July 2019, just over a month after the first fight. He said the Joshua rematch will go the distance. Most people, or many people anyway, were predicting that it would end by a knockout, either Joshua knocking Ruiz out, or most people, it seemed, were picking Ruiz to knock Joshua out even earlier in the rematch. But Abel Sanchez wasn't saying that. And remember, this is a guy who trained Andy Ruiz. He was saying, no, the fight's going to go the distance. And he was saying AJ's going to win. After such a big shock, after AJ got dropped 4 times, Abel Sanchez, a guy who knows Andy Ruiz personally, who used to train him, he was so confident and was saying it over and over again, AJ's going to win the rematch and he's going to win it on points. Why was he so confident? He was so confident that AJ was going to win because he knew that Andy Ruiz was, let me not say an accident waiting to happen, but he knew what Andy Ruiz's weaknesses were and he knew his downfall. He also said that AJ wasn't 100% the first time around and that his amateur pedigree will show in the rematch and all that kind of stuff. He maybe took his eye off the ball. He did acknowledge that, but he also alluded to the fact that Andy Ruiz is not a disciplined fighter. I mean, we can tell that from his body shape, but it's even worse than most people thought it was. Abel Sanchez knew that. In this particular video, he said that Andy Ruiz should stop being a superstar. That was just over a month after the first AJ fight. This interview here was just a few days, just a couple weeks after the AJ fight. He says AJ wasn't right. And again, time after time after time, Abel Sanchez was saying that this is one of the few people who never wavered and was very confident that AJ would win the rematch. And this was someone who knows Ruiz personally. He had him up in Big Bear and he basically said, look, if Manny Robles can get Andy Ruiz to train the way he's supposed to, then maybe Ruiz has got a chance in the rematch. But he alluded to him not being able to get Ruiz to train the way that he wanted him to train when he had him up in Big Bear. And you see, that's worrying because Ruiz is a very sociable guy, happy-go-lucky, likes to spend time with his friends and family and all that. If you've got a guy like that and he's easily distracted and ends up overeating and all that kind of stuff when he's with his friends and family, if you take him away and put him up in a training camp, let's say in Big Bear, hopefully that's the solution. But he went up to training camp with Abel Sanchez, and according to Sanchez, it didn't work. So what is going to work for Andy Ruiz? Will there ever be a turning point? Or is Ruiz a write-off at this point? To reiterate, was that payday against AJ, those 2 paydays, actually the worst thing that's ever happened to Andy Ruiz in terms of his longevity in the sport and his health? Hopefully not, but maybe so. We'll see. Now, as far as where Andy Ruiz goes from here, in terms of getting a new trainer, I really don't know. I think Sanchez was good for him stylistically. I think Robles was good for him stylistically. Freddie Roach, maybe. But look, Abel Sanchez is quite a strict disciplinarian in the gym. And he wasn't able to get Andy Ruiz under control. He wasn't able to get him disciplined. Would Freddie Roach be able to do it? I mean, Roach is a pretty strict guy in the gym. But you've seen what happened with, let's say, Chavez Jr. several times with Freddie Roach. Has let him down. And Roach keep taking the guy back. I mean, I remember when Freddie Roach was training Mike Tyson at the very end of Tyson's career. And Roach talked about how Mike Tyson didn't respect most boxing trainers. So he'd come in the gym and do whatever he wanted to do. And the trainers didn't really have the balls to stand up to him. And he said that Tyson was a guy who needed a stern trainer to be able to handle him. And so when he had Tyson in the gym and Tyson said, okay, I'm done for the day. That's it. I've done enough round sparring. Freddie Roach would say, no, the hell you haven't. Get back in the ring. And he would stare at Tyson and say, no, you get back in the ring. You're done when I tell you you're done. He put his foot down with him. He said that's what Mike Tyson needed. Is that what Andy Ruiz needs? Maybe if Andy Ruiz has that kind of trainer, he'll just up and leave. Is that what he did with Abel Sanchez? I don't know, man. It's a shame that Andy Ruiz has this issue because he is a talented fighter. He's got a great chin, big heart, fast hands, good counter-punching skills on the front foot. And as I say, if he was able to get down to under 240, he might have faster feet. He might have a better ability to move his waist and have upper body movement. Could be a real beast. A real beast. But until he sorts out this eating problem, the future is uncertain for Andy Ruiz at best. I mean, does he even need a trainer at this point? Does he actually need a psychologist who specializes in eating disorders, in treating eating disorders? Maybe he does. If Al Haymon really was responsible for Andy Ruiz firing Manny Robles, and again, just goes to show, if that's true, how much control Al Haymon appears to have over his fighters. That he can even tell them who to have as a trainer and fire trainers. Very interesting. But if Al Haymon really wants to help Andy Ruiz, maybe he should look at getting him a psychologist who specializes in fixing eating disorders. Because that's what I think he needs. That's an eating disorder he has, people. All right? That's just an eating disorder. It's not just a problem that occurred for the AJ rematch. No, he's had this his whole career. It's been a problem. Something that he's battling with his whole life. Needs to get it sorted out, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, There's no contract and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.